Good morning, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. It's Tuesday, October 7th, 2025, and this is your AM update.
Their plan all along has been to cause chaos, and then they can use that chaos to consolidate Donald Trump's power.
A federal judge allowing the Trump administration to send the National Guard to Chicago for now.
And we will know very quickly whether Hamas is serious or not by how these technical talks go in terms of the logistics.
Israeli and Hamas officials meeting in Egypt, hammering out the final details of a peace agreement 2 years to the day since the October 7th terrorist attack. CBS News entering a new era as Paramount announces Bari Weiss as its new editor-in-chief. Can she save the dying brand? And Ghislaine Maxwell's legal battle to overturn her conviction seemingly comes to an end. All that and more coming up in just a moment on your AM Update. I want to talk to you about Jevity. In my career, I've learned that information is everything, and the same, of course, applies to our health. Having the right info makes all the difference. That is where Jevity comes in. It's not just another health app. It's a longevity and health optimization platform that uses your health data to build custom care plans for your unique needs. Jevity creates personalized supplement packs based on your specific blood work, and they provide ongoing guidance to you. No more fragmented healthcare or wasting money on random supplements hoping something works. This platform analyzes essential biomarkers, giving you comprehensive health data, all accessible from home. So go to Jevity.com/Megyn and get 20% off with code Megyn. That's GoJevity.com/Megyn. All right, you got to put the word go first. Go, GEVITI.com/Megyn. In a world of one-size-fits-all solutions, Jevity brings clarity, personalization, and scientific precision to your wellness. This is not just healthcare. It is healthcare reimagined with you in mind. The governor of Illinois is alleging an unconstitutional invasion by the federal government. President Trump is considering invoking the Insurrection Act to justify his deployment of the National Guard to Chicago. Happy Tuesday. Biden appointed federal district judge April Perry on Monday, siding with the Trump administration for now and allowing President Trump to deploy 400 members of the Texas National Guard and 300 members of the Illinois National Guard to Chicago. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker and Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson trying to stop it with a lawsuit filed yesterday morning, in which they moved for a temporary restraining order and a preliminary injunction. This after the Department of War's Sunday announcement calling up the Guard for at least 60 days in order to protect federal agents and property amid an immigration crackdown in the Windy City. Judge Perry declining to immediately stop the deployment and setting briefing on the motion for an injunction, giving the Department of Justice until tomorrow night to respond, with oral arguments set for Thursday, but each side ramping up the legal rhetoric since invasion claims Pritzker, insurrection claims Mr. Trump. The Pritzker lawsuit arguing the Trump administration's justification for the deployment is, quote, based on a flimsy pretext. Far from promoting public safety in the Chicago region, defendants' provocative and arbitrary actions have threatened to undermine public safety by inciting a public outcry. In recent days, agitators clashing with ICE agents in the Chicago area, at one point protesters boxing in agents with some 10 of their vehicles. One woman armed with a semi-automatic pistol, who had earlier doxed ICE agents and called for her gang to, quote, F those MFers up, accused of trapping the officers in their cars and when they exited their vehicles trying to run them over. Officers opening fire on the woman, who was hit but still able to drive herself to the hospital. Fox News reporting more than a dozen arrested in the protests since Friday. Governor Pritzker, Attorney General Kwame Raoul, and Mayor Johnson on Monday evening railing against the Trump administration.
Their plan all along has been to cause chaos, and then they can use that chaos to consolidate Donald Trump's power. They think they can fool us all into thinking that the way to get out of this crisis that they created is to give them free rein.
The American people, regardless of where they reside, should not live under the threat of occupation by the United States military, particularly for the reason that their city or state leadership has fallen out of the president's political favor.
The only radical is a president trying to deploy National Guard from across the country into our city. We do not need or want the National Guard to police our streets.
In a separate action, Mayor Johnson on Monday morning signing an executive order installing ICE-free zones within the city.
The order establishes ICE-free zones. That means that city property and unwilling private businesses will no longer serve as staging grounds for these raids. Private establishments can partner with us to make it clear that private property is private property, and ICE cannot enter establishments without a valid warrant. Private entities may voluntarily choose to display signage to designate their property as part of a citywide network of community spaces that stand together in affirming the safety, dignity, and belonging of all of our residents. By extending this protection beyond city-owned land, the order builds a broad civic shield that limits the reach of harmful enforcement practices.
The White House responding in a statement, quote, "Shielding the most depraved, violent, criminal, illegal aliens from justice is not only an insult to every Chicagoan, it's also a dangerous intensification of Democrats' lunatic sanctuary agenda where criminal illegals come before American citizens." The White House then listing 8 illegal aliens arrested in recent days and their alleged offenses, including aggravated criminal sexual assault, concealing homicidal death, armed carjacking, and failure to register as a sex offender. Today, marking 2 years since Hamas terrorists launched a devastating attack on Israel, killing 1,200 and taking around 250 hostage, including American citizens. The terrorists storming a music festival, gunning down young revelers in cold blood. To this day, 48 hostages remain in captivity. Only 20 are believed to be alive, according to the BBC. A few weeks later, Israel began its full-scale invasion of Gaza, destroying tunnels and buildings in pursuit of ending Hamas's control of the region once and for all. It's nearly impossible to get a true death toll. The Palestinian Ministry of Health, a Hamas-run organization, claims more than 60,000 have been killed in the war. Even if that number were true, however, we know it makes no distinction between civilians and militants. What we do know is tens of thousands have been killed. On Monday, Israeli and Hamas officials meeting at an Egyptian resort to hammer out the final details of a peace deal proposed by the Trump administration. The 20-point plan unveiled at the White House last week. More on that in a moment. News of the deal comes as American support for Israel's war is on a downward trend. A new Washington Post poll showing 61% of American Jews believe Israel is committing war crimes in Gaza. Nearly 40% say Israel is committing a genocide. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also losing popularity among American Jews, 68% rating his performance as either poor or only fair. However, 94% of American Jews simultaneously say Hamas has committed war crimes against Israel, with 68% blaming Hamas for civilian deaths in Gaza. A new Pew Research poll showing 59% of U.S. adults hold an unfavorable opinion of the Israeli government. That's up from 51% in early 2024. 33% say the U.S. is providing too much military assistance to Israel, as opposed to 8% who say it's not enough. A New York Times poll last week showing American support for Israel has, quote, undergone a seismic reversal, with large shares of voters expressing starkly negative views about Israel's management of the war. 6 out of 10 saying Israel should end its military campaign, even if the hostages are not released. Nearly 7 in 10 younger voters oppose additional aid to Israel. Republicans are still Israel's strongest supporters, though their support has dropped 12 points since the war began. On Friday, Hamas partially accepting Mr. Trump's proposal, agreeing to release the hostages while calling for further negotiations on other elements of the deal. Axios reporting on a Friday call between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu, Mr. Netanyahu reportedly characterized the response as a rejection of the plan. President Trump reportedly replying, quote, "I don't know why you're always so effing negative. This is a win. Take it." By Saturday, the Prime Minister publicly taking credit for the deal. Secretary of State Marco Rubio Sunday on Meet the Press elaborating on details of the ongoing negotiations in Egypt.
Now, we need to work through the logistics of how that's going to happen. I mean, and again, that sounds simplistic, but it's not just about, you got to make sure that there's no fighting going on. You have to make sure the Red Cross can get there, what time they're going to be there, where they're going to be. All of that has to be worked through, and that's not easy in the middle of an active war zone. That has to be de-escalated, and that's exactly what they're meeting about right now. I mean, that's what the talks are about. That's what the high-level talks are going to be in Cairo tomorrow.
Mr. Secretary, they could be released this week?
Our expectation, we want it to be as soon as possible. There's no doubt about it. We want it as soon as possible. It needs to happen as quickly as possible. And we will know very quickly whether Hamas is serious or not by how these technical talks go in terms of the logistics. But absolutely, we want these hostages, all of them, living and deceased, released as soon as possible.
CNN reporting the talks are expected to last a few days, with mediators from the U.S., Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey also participating. On Sunday, President Trump telling reporters he believes the war could be ended within a few days, texting with CNN's Jake Tapper, saying if Hamas does not refuse to cede power in Gaza, it faces, quote, complete obliteration. Coming up, big changes coming to CBS News as parent company Paramount announces a new editor-in-chief for its news division. And Ghislaine Maxwell reaches the end of the road in her legal challenge to overturn her criminal conviction. Did you know chips and fries used to be cooked in tallow up until the 1990s when big corporations switched to cheap processed seed oils? Today, seed oils make up 20% of the average American's daily calories, and recent studies linked seed oils to metabolic health issues and inflammation. Well, Masa decided to do something about it. They created a tasty tortilla chip with just 3 ingredients: organic corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. These chips avoid all the bad stuff and taste incredible too. Masa is crunchier, tastier, and sturdier than other chips. The beef tallow makes the chips much more satiating, so you will not find yourself binging and then hungry immediately afterwards. Ready to give Masa a try? Go to masachips.com/MK. Use the code MK for 25% off your first order. That's masachips.com/MK and code MK for 25% off. That's a lot. Your first order. Don't feel like ordering online? That's fine. Masa is now available nationwide at your local Sprouts supermarket. Stop by and pick up a bag before they're all gone. CBS News parent company Paramount on Monday announcing a $150 million deal to acquire independent news and opinion site The Free Press, founded by Bari Weiss, who is also stepping into the role of editor-in-chief of CBS News. Weiss left her post as a columnist and editor at the New York Times in 2020, publishing a letter lambasting her colleagues and the institution itself. Quote, "A new consensus has emerged in the press, but perhaps especially at this paper, that truth is not a process of collective discovery, but an orthodoxy already known to an enlightened few whose job it is to inform everyone else." Weiss then founding The Free Press, growing it into a newsletter it says has more than 1.5 million subscribers, with approximately 170,000 paying subscribers. On Monday, Weiss addressing the deal on her Honestly podcast, explaining why she is returning to legacy media after publicly swearing it off.
I was raised to be a believer in the institutions that built America and that made sense of it. Our universities, book publishers, movie studios, and yes, newspaper companies that forged public opinion for the entirety of my grandparents' and parents' lives. But what I found 5 years ago is that the most important public conversations were happening outside of those places. So much has changed since then. As the gatekeepers of the mainstream have failed one after another, an explosion took place across the media landscape. Incredible new voices came to the fore. Personalities and influencers have overtaken 100-year-old journalism brands in only a few years. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that allows us to do just that. It gives the Free Press a chance to help reshape a storied media organization, to help guide CBS News into a future that honors those great American values that underpin the Free Press and the best of American journalism, and in doing so, to bring our mission to millions of people.
Chairman and CEO of Paramount, David Ellison, releasing a statement, quote, "This move is part of Paramount's bigger vision to modernize content and the way it connects directly and passionately to audiences around the world." CBS News struggling in recent years with declining ratings and internal battles fueled by ideological infighting. CBS Mornings consistently trailing behind its competitors on ABC and NBC as the show's programming, reportedly heavily influenced by self-declared astronaut Gayle King, leans into heavily progressive themes. Earlier this year, Paramount agreeing to pay $16 million to settle a lawsuit with President Trump over a 60 Minutes interview Mr. Trump says was deceptively edited to favor then Vice President Harris in the lead-up to the 2024 election. But let's face it, that was the least of 60 Minutes and CBS News' bias problems. Paramount also agreeing to install an ombudsman and committing to ensuring, quote, viewpoint diversity, non-discrimination, and enhanced localism in its coverage as part of its bid to gain approval for a multi-billion-dollar merger with Skydance earlier this year. What they're going to do about being an absolute bore, we don't yet know. Media reporter for The Guardian, Jeremy Barr, posting to X about internal reactions to Weiss's new position, quote, several CBS News employees I have spoken with said they are in wait-and-see mode. One was more blunt. A throwing up emoji is not enough of a reflection of the feelings in here. Good luck to our pal Bari as she enters the snake pit that is corporate legacy media. The Supreme Court on Monday bringing final closure to Ghislaine Maxwell's attempt to get her criminal conviction tossed, declining to hear her appeal. Jeffrey Epstein's former girlfriend and confidant, convicted in the Southern District of New York in 2021, sentenced to 20 years in prison in 2022 for her role in sexually abusing minors with the disgraced financier. The court's decision likely marking the end of the legal road for Maxwell, meaning clemency is the only path to early release. Maxwell appealing several aspects of her conviction, her argument resting largely on a highly unusual and equally controversial 2008 plea deal between Jeffrey Epstein and the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Florida. The terms of that agreement allowing Epstein to plead guilty to 2 state charges, 1 count of soliciting prostitution and 1 count of soliciting prostitution from a minor, which is not a thing. That's called statutory rape. Anyway, they allowed that in exchange for avoiding federal charges against him. The deal also barring future prosecution of Epstein and, quote, potential co-conspirators. Maxwell's attorneys arguing that meant her, contending Epstein's Florida plea deal should have barred Maxwell's later prosecution in New York. The Second Circuit Court of Appeals not buying it, writing, quote, it is well established in our circuit that a plea agreement binds only the office of the U.S. Attorney for the district in which the plea is entered, unless it affirmatively appears that the agreement contemplates a broader restriction. In July, Maxwell meeting with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche over 2 days, speaking about what she observed during her time with Epstein, who officials say died by suicide in 2019 while awaiting trial. Following that meeting, Maxwell was moved to a lower security prison in Texas, an apparent concession for her cooperation, with no official reason given for the move. The meeting arranged amid public outcry over the handling of the Epstein case. Despite Maxwell's cooperation with Blanche and her legal team's public musings about hopes for a pardon, the Trump DOJ continuously fighting against Maxwell's attempts to overturn her conviction. Maxwell's attorney, David Oscar Marcus, saying, quote, this fight is not over. Serious legal and factual issues remain, and we will continue to pursue every avenue available to ensure that justice is done. And that'll do it for your AM update. I'm Megyn Kelly. Join me back here for the Megyn Kelly Show, live on SiriusXM Triumph Channel 111 at noon East, on youtube.com/Megyn Kelly, and on all podcast platforms.